Have you noticed how some workplace competencies decline over time if they're not used or refreshed often? Today, we're exploring how microlearning can maintain core competencies, creating a sawtooth in our graph. Welcome back. Today we're discussing how competencies can decline over time and how microlearning can help maintain and elevate them continuously. Competencies are the skill and knowledge and abilities that people need to perform effectively. However, these competencies can decline over time if they are not regularly used or refreshed. This decline can be gradual and really problematic for an organisation if you're not aware that somebody is losing them. My favourite example of this is first aid, and if we sort of set out our table here, we've got a couple of things. We've got bandages, which is one competency inside first aid. We call it wounds. We've got anaphylaxis, and here's a slightly older model anaphylaxis pen or an EpiPen. And then we've got CPR. We're sort of going to do that one as red. Let's assume somebody's never done first aid before. We do the course and bang, we shoot up to competent on the day of training. And then I lose those sort of competencies around how to do CPR and the rates of that sort of stuff over a year. And then in Australia, we have to do CPR part of first aid every year. So I get a graph that looks like that. Then here with bandaging, you might imagine a school teacher here. They again get bandaging on day one and it starts to decline. But they get to practice that skill very regularly. If I'm a school teacher in the schoolyard, kids are sort of grazing themselves and cutting themselves in the playground, that skill remains fairly tight and competent. And that'll probably go on for the whole semester. Maybe over holidays it sort of declines a bit, but then comes back. But then we look at skills that I don't get to practice that often. Yes, I come up here, but I may not administer an EpiPen for a year and a half, and my skills are likely to sort of decline. Then I might have an incident, or we might have a little refresher training at work, and then it goes on again. These sawtoothing sort of competencies, and again, we think about competencies in a couple of ways. One, am I current? That is, certified to be a teacher in playground. Am I competent? Do I really know how to do this if needed? And then confidence. Am I confident to do this if called upon to administer an EpiPen to somebody? And that, believe me, is quite an emotional task to actually hit somebody with an EpiPen. You want to be confident that you can do it and do it well. So very quickly, if we think about microlearning gives us the opportunity to sort of say to people, look, you will not use this very often, but I can send you a little refresher. So particularly, one of the ones that I like to think about is, with CPR, often schools have their own mannequins, or these are kind of like cheap inflatable mannequins. You could literally send someone a microlearning sort of little reminder to say, here's 3 questions on CPR, and grab your mannequin and go and practice this. So I'm actually not going to lose these competencies over the 12 months. There's a number of things about the rate and the speed and the depth that you need to do CPR and the primary survey. So if we're doing microlearning and we're continually just reminding people, here's some skills, we can change this graph, particularly on something like EpiPen, which I'm unlikely to use every term or semester. It's more of a springtime thing. But we can be sending people reminders with microlearning and little bits of learning to maintain all our competencies above what I would say is a critical risk threshold. So this critical risk threshold is really, what risk is the organisation willing to accept that an incident happened, that the staff member assigned to the playground that day could exhibit not only bleeding, EpiPen, anaphylaxis, CPR, or whatever is required, is that the community, the parents, and the Department of Education has an expectation that would be a current person who's competent and confident to exhibit that on the day they need to. So you've got to maintain this critical risk threshold and say, I'd be unhappy as a parent if I actually found out afterwards, post an incident, that a person was not confident or competent in performing that skill. If I take this out of digital microlearning, the classic example of that is in the construction industry. And if you've ever worked on a construction site, you'll know that they have these things called lunchbox or toolbox stand-ups or meetings. Quite literally what you'll see on a hot day is everybody gathered around by the foreman as they're walking onto the site saying, today is going to be 37 degrees, we've got to look after ourselves, we've got to drink our water. The symptoms that you can observe for heat stress are like poor decision making, stopping of sweating. The foreman will often sort of outline these sort of things. It's a microlearning course. It literally takes a minute to say, let's get home safely, which is a motto on most work sites. So I love that idea that microlearning doesn't have to be digital, it doesn't have to be a course that's been pinged out to a learner. It can be an element of training that's delivered to people in under a minute, which says, today's going to be a hot day. We have this elevated risk profile for you all on site this morning. I just need to remind you of these things and remind you to look out for each other. I'd really invite you all to have a think about your organisation and what falls below this critical risk threshold where we say it's actually quite unacceptable that people would forget this risk or not be confident to exhibit it. In the comments below, I'd be really interested and like to hear from you on what risks exist in your organisation and how you could refresh some of those competencies with microlearning. As usual, if you like the video, hit the like button. If you'd like to subscribe and hear more of these videos, hit the subscribe button. And if you know anybody who you think would enjoy videos like this and benefit from a look at them, then please share the link. Thanks very much.